The chamber doors opened with a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Ambassador Marcus Webb stepped through, and the noise hit him like a physical force. 10,000 voices speaking in languages no human ear was meant to hear, translated through neural implants into a cacophony that made his head pound. The council chamber stretched upward into darkness, its walls alive with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with debates, happening across 1,000 different frequencies. Marcus walked alone across the polished obsidian floor, toward the judgment circle at the chamber's center. With each step, more alien eyes turned toward him. Some had eyes. Others had sensory organs humans didn't have words for. A creature made entirely of crystallized sound watched him through vibrations. A being composed of living mercury shifted its form to track his movement. Something that existed partially in dimensions human perception couldn't. Process cast shadows that moved independent of any light source. Above him, suspended on platforms that defied gravity, sat the council's leadership. The High Arbiter occupied the central position, a massive being covered in metallic feathers that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. Its 7 eyes tracked Marcus with an intelligence that had governed galactic affairs for longer than human. Civilization had existed. Marcus reached the judgment circle and stopped. A holographic barrier shimmered into existence around him, cutting him off from the rest of the chamber. He was alone now, truly alone, standing before the most powerful governing body in the known galaxy. The Arbiter's voice filled the chamber, through translation nodes embedded in every surface. The words bypassed Marcus's ears entirely. Appearing directly in his mind through technology humanity was only beginning to understand. Ambassador Marcus Webb of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your species. Humanity has been confined to its homeworld for 218 standard cycles. During this time, we have observed you, studied you, watched as you rebuilt your civilization after centuries of self-destructive conflict. The containment field around your solar system was not punishment. It was protection. Protection for the galaxy from humanity's violent tendencies. Protection for humanity from threats you were not ready to face. Marcus said nothing. He'd been briefed extensively on council protocols. Speaking before being granted permission would end the hearing immediately. The Arbiter continued. Today, we determine whether that containment should be lifted, whether humanity has learned the lessons necessary to join the community of civilized species, whether you can be trusted with access to the wider galaxy. The chamber's displays lit up with evidence. Images of Earth's history appeared in holographic detail around Marcus. Wars spanning continents, nuclear weapons detonating in test ranges, environmental devastation, political violence, religious conflicts, the darkest moments of human history, all cataloged and preserved by alien observers who had watched from orbit for 2 centuries. Your species has a documented history of aggression spanning millennia, a delegate announced. The being resembled a cloud of luminous gas, its form constantly shifting colors. 47 documented violations of what we consider basic civilized behavior. Warfare between tribal groups. Warfare between nations. Warfare between ideological factions. You have poisoned your own atmosphere. You have driven countless species on your world to extinction. You have created weapons capable of destroying all life on your planet and came within moments of using them on 3 separate occasions. Another delegate spoke, this one with a crystalline exoskeleton that chimed softly with each word. The singing hives vote to maintain containment. Humanity demonstrates insufficient emotional regulation for safe integration into galactic society. The Valkesh Collective concurs, the gaseous being added. Release would endanger established peace. One by one, delegates cast their preliminary votes. Marcus listened to each one, his expression never changing. The count rose steadily against humanity. 40 species voted for continued containment. Then 50. Then 60. Finally, the Arbiter raised one wing, and silence fell across the chamber. Ambassador Webb, you may now speak in humanity's defense. You have been granted 10 standard minutes to present your case. Choose your words carefully. The future of your species depends on this moment. Marcus took a slow breath. Every human alive was watching this broadcast. Every member of the council was judging not just his words, but his demeanor, his confidence, his very presence. He needed to be perfect. Honored council, he began, his voice steady and clear. You speak of humanity's history of violence as if it disqualifies us from galactic society. You point to our wars, our conflicts, our mistakes as evidence that we are too dangerous to be released from containment. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. But you have made one critical error in your assessment. The Arbiter's feathers bristled slightly. Explain. Marcus reached into his jacket slowly, careful not to make any movement that might be interpreted as threatening. He withdrew a small metallic device, no larger than a coin, and placed it on the platform before him. The holographic barrier scanned it immediately, displaying its analysis for the entire council to see. This device contains complete navigational data for every jump gate in the local cluster, detailed records of your patrol routes around our solar system, communication encryption keys for council military networks, sensor blind spots in your containment field. We have had this information for 73 years. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates leaped to their feet, or their nearest equivalent. Security drones materialized from hidden alcoves throughout the chamber, weapons charging with energy signatures that made the air crackle. Warning klaxons blared in frequencies that human ears couldn't detect, but Marcus felt in his bones. Impossible. The Valkesh delegate's gaseous form turned a violent crimson. Our monitoring systems would have detected any attempt to breach the containment field. Our sensors would have identified unauthorized transmissions. Our security protocols are designed to detect conventional spacecraft and energy signatures. Marcus interrupted calmly. We stopped using conventional technology 47 years ago. Every meteor that struck your satellites, every solar flare that disrupted your sensors, every equipment malfunction in your monitoring stations. We caused all of it, systematically, gradually, so slowly that you never noticed the pattern. The Arbiter descended rapidly from its platform, its massive form casting shadows that seemed to swallow light. You admit to espionage? To sabotage of Council security systems? This is an act of war. No, Marcus said, and his voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is proof that we could have left at any time. The chamber fell silent. Marcus continued, his words measured and deliberate. We have had the capability to breach your containment for nearly a century. We could have established colonies in unclaimed systems. We could have built an empire in the shadows while you debated our fate in this chamber. We could have developed military capabilities without your oversight, created alliances with species you've never encountered, positioned ourselves as a power you would never see coming. He picked up the device again. But we didn't. We stayed inside the cage you built. We submitted to your monitoring. We followed your rules. Not because we had to, because we chose to. We wanted to prove that humanity had changed, that we had learned restraint, that we could be trusted. The Arbiter's 7 eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. You claim this demonstrates restraint? You violated our security and call it virtue? I claim this demonstrates exactly what you were testing for. Marcus activated the device. New holographic displays filled the chamber, these showing data the Council had never seen before. For 200 years, you watched us to determine if we were ready to join galactic society. You wanted to see if we could overcome our violent nature, if we could learn patience, if we could develop the wisdom necessary to handle power responsibly. The displays showed detailed analyses of threats throughout Council space. Pirate networks operating in territories the Council thought were secure. A hostile collective massing forces beyond the galactic rim. Resource depletion patterns indicating several member civilizations faced economic collapse within decades. Security vulnerabilities in Council infrastructure. Corruption in the oversight committees. A dozen different crises the Council either didn't know about or had chosen to ignore. We watched you too, Marcus said quietly, and we saw that this Council, for all its age and power, struggles with problems you won't acknowledge publicly. Your military is overstretched. Your economy has stagnated. Your member species grow restless under bureaucracy that prioritizes procedure over results. You don't need to keep humanity contained. You need us as allies. A new delegate spoke, an elderly being whose skin glowed with soft bioluminescence. You presume to lecture this Council on its own governance? I presume to offer partnership between equals. Marcus met the delegate's gaze directly. You tested us for 200 years. We passed your test. We had power and chose restraint. We had opportunity and chose patience. We had the means to break free and chose to wait for your permission. The only question now is whether. You're wise enough to recognize what that means? The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then it began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. You are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Ambassador Webb. I'm neither. I'm honest. Marcus gestured to the data still displayed around the chamber. You can vote to maintain our containment. You can decide that humanity is too dangerous to release. But we both know that containment is already broken. We're having this conversation not because we need your permission, but because we want your partnership. The galaxy faces threats you cannot handle alone. Humanity offers capabilities you desperately need. The question isn't whether we're ready for the galaxy. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us. 3 months had passed since the Council voted to release humanity from containment. The decision had been narrow, passing by only a handful of votes after Marcus Webb's revelation about humanity's secret capabilities. Now the Arbiter stood in its private observation chamber, watching the space around Earth with growing concern that bordered on alarm. The transformation was staggering. What had been empty orbital space during humanity's imprisonment now swarmed with activity that defied every projection the Council's analysts had made. Hundreds of vessels moved between Earth and the Moon, constructing stations that dwarfed anything the Council had expected humanity could build so quickly. The Arbiter's assistant, a methodical creature named Peltrek with 6 arms and a chitinous exoskeleton, worked frantically at multiple data terminals simultaneously. High Arbiter, the latest count shows 247 human vessels have departed Earth's system since we lifted the containment field, all properly registered with our transit authority as required by the release agreement. And the unofficial count? The Arbiter asked, already knowing it would not like the answer. Peltrek's faceplates shifted in what the Arbiter had learned to recognize as extreme discomfort. Our deep space monitoring stations detect gravitational anomalies consistent with at least 400 additional vessels. They appear on our sensors for microseconds before vanishing completely. We cannot track them. We cannot identify their propulsion systems. They are using technology we have no classification for. The Arbiter's metallic feathers turned a dull gray, a biological response to stress. 400 ships we cannot track. In only 3 months. What are they doing? That remains unclear. The registered human colonies are developing exactly as their permits specify. Standard agriculture, mining operations, basic infrastructure. But the systems where we detect these unregistered vessels, show energy signatures suggesting industrial construction on a massive scale, the kind of output it should take decades to achieve. Before the Arbiter could respond, every display in the observation chamber flashed red. Emergency alerts screamed through the translation network. Peltrock's translator crackled with barely controlled panic as it relayed the message. Emergency Council Session. The Vel-Shoran hegemony has filed a formal complaint. They demand humanity's immediate expulsion from the Council. They claim humans have violated the settlement accords. In the emergency chamber, Hegemon Rathkol stood at the center platform, his forearms gesturing violently at holographic images projected for all delegates to see. The images showed a star system on the edge of Vel-Shoran space, one they had claimed for future resource extraction, but had not yet developed due to the expense of building infrastructure so far from their core worlds. Except the system was not empty anymore. These facilities, Rathkol's voice shook with rage, are human. 7 orbital platforms, 3 planetary outposts. What our military analysts believe is a weapons installation on the largest moon. We discovered them by accident during a routine survey flight. They have been operating in secret for 9 months. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood calmly in the human delegation area, his hands clasped behind his back. The system was unclaimed. Article 7 of the Settlement Accords clearly states that any member species may develop unclaimed territory provided they register their claim within 6 months of initial construction. You began construction 9 months ago. Rathkol's skin flushed a deep purple. You are still under containment. This is illegal colonization. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates from dozens of species shouted accusations and demands. The Arbiter struggled to restore order, finally resorting to a sonic pulse that silenced every voice in the chamber for 10 seconds. Marcus waited for the noise to die down before speaking again, his voice calm and measured. We did not begin construction 9 months ago. We launched automated survey probes 9 months ago, while still under containment. The probes were programmed to drift passively through space, gathering data until such time as humanity was granted permission to develop beyond our solar system. They activated themselves the day the containment field was lifted, all perfectly legal under the settlement accords. A Quillian delegate named Vestar vibrated with fury, its quills rattling like 1,000 knives. This is sophistry. Legal tricks. How many other systems have you seeded with these dormant probes? Marcus smiled slightly. I am not required to answer that question. But in the spirit of transparency and cooperation, I will tell you. Approximately 700 systems within reasonable travel distance of Earth. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the chamber's ambient systems seemed to hold their breath. 700, the Arbiter repeated slowly, as if testing whether the words made sense. You claim to have established presence in 700 star systems? Claiming would be premature, Marcus corrected. We have established exploratory presence in 700 systems. We will file development permits for those we plan to actually utilize. The settlement accords require registration before construction, not before exploration. We are following the law precisely as written. Peltrock frantically searched through the Council's legal databases, its 6 arms moving in a blur across holographic interfaces. It whispered to the Arbiter, he is technically correct. The language permits exploratory presence prior to formal territorial claims. Rathkol's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. What exactly are you building in these systems, Ambassador Webb? The same things you build, Hegemon. Homes for our people, factories to produce goods, infrastructure to support colonies. Nothing prohibited by council law. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Or are you asking what we are building in the 3 systems you have been secretly surveying, planning to claim them before anyone else noticed? Every eye in the chamber turned to Rathkol. The hegemon's skin color shifted rapidly through several shades, a clear sign of extreme distress among his species. How did you ... Rathkol stopped himself, realizing he had just confirmed the accusation. How did we know? Marcus's expression did not change. The same way we know about the singing hives. Unregistered mining operations. In the Vortex Belt. The same way we know about the Kelvani. Weapons research facility in the Outer Dark. The same way we know about 17. So-called nature preserves that are actually military installations. Operated by various council members. He pulled up new data. Displays that made several delegates gasp. Humanity spent 200 years learning to watch without being seen. Did you think we would stop just because you released us? We are still watching. We see everything. An elder Kelvani delegate rose, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with colors that signified grave concern. Ambassador Webb, you describe an intelligence-gathering network that rivals anything the Council itself maintains. How is this possible? Your people were isolated for 2 centuries. Were we? Marcus activated more displays. You isolated our ships and our official communications. You could not isolate our ability to think, to calculate, to understand physics. Every Council vessel that passed within sensor range of Earth, we studied. Every encrypted transmission you thought was secure, we analyzed. Every weakness in your containment field, we documented. He highlighted specific points in the data. The Archivon species uses quantum entangled particles for long-range communication. The entanglement patterns degrade predictably near heavy gravity wells. We learned to intercept your messages by reading the degradation. The Velshorans use mathematical encryption that human cryptographers solved in the year 2040. The singing hives use crystalline resonance for communication. But sound is just vibration, and humans are very good at detecting vibrations. The singing hive delegate stood abruptly, its crystalline structure resonating with fury. You have been intercepting internal Council communications? This is espionage. Only the communications concerning humanity, Marcus replied. We had a vested interest in knowing what you were saying about us when we could not defend ourselves. What we learned was very educational. We learned that this Council is far less unified than it appears. That many member species maintain secret weapons programs in violation of your own. Disarmament protocols. That several civilizations face economic collapse. That the Council maintains its power through carefully controlled information. The Arbiter descended rapidly from its platform, its massive form creating shadows that seemed to absorb light. You accuse this Council of corruption? I accuse this Council of being exactly what it is. A political body made of diverse species with competing interests, held together by mutual benefit and enough fear of external threats to maintain cooperation. We are not shocked by this. We have run governments before. We understand how power works. What concerns us is that you seem to think we would be satisfied being junior partners in a system that is slowly failing. Vestar's quills rattled violently. Failing? The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years. You have maintained stagnation, Marcus countered. He displayed economic data. Galactic economic growth has been essentially flat for 400 years. Technological innovation is at its lowest point in Council history. Birth rates are declining across 70% of member species. Your infrastructure runs on systems built 600 years ago, and your military is stretched so thin that pirate raids in the outer territories have increased by 300% in just the last decade. You cannot possibly know. Another delegate began. But we do know. We spent our isolation looking forward, not backward. We unified 7 billion people under a single government. We develop technologies you do not have words for. We prepared for the day we would be free, and we prepared to move quickly once that day came. The Arbiter hovered directly in front of Marcus. All 7 eyes focused on the human ambassador with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. What exactly are you building in those 700 systems, Ambassador? Marcus met its gaze without hesitation. A future where humanity never has to ask permission to exist. Where we are not the newest members scrambling for table scraps. We are building fast, and we are building in ways that ensure we will never be caged again. That sounds like a threat. It is a statement of fact. Every species in this chamber had the opportunity to expand freely when they joined the Council. Humanity is the first species inducted while already possessing faster-than-light capability. You made us wait 200 years while the galaxy was divided among everyone else. We are simply claiming our share at an accelerated pace. An alert suddenly cut through the chamber. Every delegate's personal display lit up simultaneously with an emergency bulletin from Council Security. Peltruck's voice shook as it read the incoming data. Multiple jump gate activations detected. Unregistered vessels entering Council space. Signatures match the hostile collective that has been massing beyond the galactic rim. They are here. 20,000 vessels. They are attacking the outer defense perimeter. Admiral Kira Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Earth starship Defiant, watching tactical displays update in real time as her fleet moved into position. The view screen showed the battle unfolding at the outer edge of Council space. 20,000 hostile vessels had emerged from jump gates simultaneously, catching the Council's defense fleet completely unprepared. Council ships were dying. The tactical display showed red icons winking out of existence as vessels were destroyed faster than the computer could update the casualty count. The hostile collective fought with a brutality that shocked even the human military observers. They did not aim to disable or capture. They aimed to annihilate. Kira's tactical officer, Lieutenant Ramos, worked frantically at his station. Council losses are catastrophic, Admiral. They have lost 400 ships in the first 20 minutes. Their defensive formations are collapsing. At this rate, the hostile fleet will break through to the inner systems within 6 hours. Position of our fleet? Kira asked calmly. 300 vessels ready for combat operations. Another 2,000 autonomous combat drones are standing by for deployment. We are currently holding position at Rally Point Gamma as ordered. Kira tapped her command console, opening a secure channel. Get me Ambassador Webb. Marcus appeared on screen immediately, still standing in the council chamber, where chaos had erupted the moment the attack alert came through. Behind him, alien delegates shouted and argued while emergency protocols activated throughout the facility. Admiral, Marcus said without preamble. You are watching the tactical feed? Yes. Council forces are being slaughtered. They are using conventional tactics against an enemy that clearly planned for this engagement. Their defensive formations are predictable. Their response time is slow. They are losing because they fight the way they have always fought. And we do not, Marcus finished. The Council is about to learn why humanity spent 200 years developing new approaches to warfare. Are you ready? The fleet is ready. But I need authorization. The Council has not requested our assistance. If we engage without permission, it could be interpreted as an act of aggression. Marcus turned to look at something off-screen. When he turned back, his expression was grim. The Arbiter is about to give you that authorization. The Council just realized they cannot win this fight alone. Stand by. The channel switched to show the Arbiter's face filling the screen. The ancient being's metallic feathers had lost all color, a sign of extreme stress. Admiral Okonkwo. The Council formally requests military assistance from Earth forces. You are granted full operational authority to engage the hostile fleet using any means necessary. Kira nodded once. Understood, High Arbiter. My fleet will deploy immediately. I recommend you pull your remaining forces back to defensive positions around the core worlds. Let us handle the hostile advance. You have 300 ships, the Arbiter said. They have 20,000. How can you possibly? Watch and learn. Kira interrupted, then cut the communication. She turned to her crew. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega. Release the drones. Activate stealth systems. Let them see what humanity built while we were caged. On the tactical display, the 300 human vessels suddenly vanished from sensors. The Council observers watching the battle gasped as every single Earthship disappeared as if they had never existed. Even their own tracking systems lost contact. Then the drones activated 2,000 small vessels, each one piloted by advanced artificial intelligence and networked through quantum communication systems, materialized throughout the battle space. They moved unlike anything the Council had ever seen. No predictable flight paths. No standard attack formations. They flowed through space like schools of fish, reacting to threats faster than biological minds could process. The hostile fleet noticed the new contacts and began redirecting fire. Energy beams lanced through space where the drones had been milliseconds before. Missiles detonated against empty vacuum. The human drones were simply too fast, too unpredictable. Then the killing began. Each drone carried weapons that violated several Council prohibitions on weapons technology. Gravitational disruptors that created localized distortions in spacetime itself. Any hostile ship caught in the field experienced different parts of its hull existing in different gravitational states simultaneously. The ships did not explode. They simply crumpled, crushed by impossible forces that should not exist. Lieutenant Ramos watched the tactical display with something approaching awe. Enemy casualties mounting rapidly. They have lost 300 ships. 500. 800. Admiral, they are trying to adapt, but they cannot target our drones. The AI systems are predicting their firing solutions and moving before they can shoot. Deploy Phase 2. Kira ordered. The 300 crewed vessels dropped their stealth fields simultaneously, appearing in perfect formation behind the hostile fleet's main concentration. Before the enemy could react, the human ships activated their primary weapons. The Council observers watching from their command center saw something that made no sense. Space itself seemed to break. Reality twisted in ways that violated every known law of physics. Hostile vessels caught in the distortion fields found their weapon systems failing, their engines shutting down, their life support struggling as the fundamental constants they relied upon suddenly changed. In the Council war room. Fleet Commander Tatsrian stared at the displays with his tentacles writhing in confusion and fear. What are they doing? That technology should not be possible. Ambassador Marcus stood beside him, watching calmly. Humanity spent 200 years studying the containment field you placed around our system. We learned how it worked. Then we learned how to weaponize it. What you are seeing is a localized reality distortion field. Inside that field, the laws of physics become optional. That is insane. Tatsrian's skin flushed with agitation. You cannot simply change how reality works. We can in limited areas for limited periods. And that is all we need. Watch. The hostile fleet found itself trapped in a nightmare. Half their vessels were caught in zones where their technology simply stopped functioning. The other half faced drones that moved with impossible speed and precision. And behind them all, 300 human ships advanced in formations that somehow managed to avoid every attack while there. Weapons carved through enemy. Vessels like a hot blade through snow. Kira studied the tactical situation with professional detachment. Enemy FL. Believe the right to choose your own path, even if it's the wrong path, is fundamental. Not because we're special, not because we're stronger than species you've destroyed before, but because that right should belong to everyone, and somebody has to be first to claim it. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber. Arbiter Kelvin, I request a full recess. The Council needs time to consider not just the human proposal, but the philosophical questions it raises. These are matters that deserve thorough deliberation. Kelvin's form swirled, and for a moment David thought he might refuse. Then the Arbiter nodded slowly. Agreed. We will reconvene in 12 hours. Human delegate, you will be provided quarters and sustenance during the recess. Your ships will remain at their current positions. We will resume negotiations when the Council has reached internal consensus. As the session ended, and David was escorted from the platform by security drones, he allowed himself a small breath of relief. They hadn't agreed to humanity's terms, but they also hadn't immediately launched a military response. Council was actually considering negotiation. It was more than any previous species had achieved. Quarters the Council provided were comfortable, but clearly designed to contain rather than welcome. A single room with basic furniture, walls that were undoubtedly transparent from the outside, and no access to external communications beyond what the Council chose to provide. David ate a meal of synthesized nutrients that approximated human dietary needs, then spent several hours reviewing his strategy for the next session. He was surprised when Counselor Vex requested a private meeting. The ancient being arrived without fanfare, accompanied only by a single security drone. Vex's species, the Tall, resembled mantis-like creatures stretched to 3 meters tall, but with an additional set of limbs and sensory organs that defied easy classification. Vex himself was old, even by Tall standards, his carapace showing patterns of wear that indicated thousands of years of existence. Ambassador Miller. Vex began, settling into a position that might have been sitting. I hope I am not intruding. I felt a private conversation might prove beneficial to both our species. David gestured to a chair, maintaining diplomatic protocols. Counselor Vex, your visit is welcome. I've read about your species' history with the Council. The Tall were among the founding members, weren't they? We were the third species to join, 8,000 years ago. I myself have served on the Council for 3,000 years. I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. I have voted on extinction orders for 40 species that threatened galactic stability. Vex's mandibles clicked in a pattern David's translator rendered as regret. I tell you this not to threaten, but to establish context for what I am about to say. David waited, sensing this conversation was about to become crucial. You have done something remarkable, Ambassador. In 12,000 years, no species has successfully challenged Council authority in the way humanity has. Others have tried, of course. They all failed. But you succeeded not through superior military force, but through strategic thinking and careful preparation. You identified our weaknesses and exploited them brilliantly. Vex leaned forward slightly. But I must tell you that many Council members see your success as an existential threat. Not because you pose military danger, but because you prove that resistance is possible. The Council's authority rests on the assumption that opposition is futile. You have shattered that assumption. There are species in this chamber who will push for your destruction, not despite your diplomatic success, but because of it. I understand the risk, David said, but we couldn't continue pretending to accept Council authority while secretly resenting it. That path leads to either submission or poorly planned rebellion. We chose a third option, honest confrontation backed by credible deterrence. A dangerous choice, Vex observed, but perhaps a necessary one. Ambassador, may I speak candidly about matters the Council does not often discuss openly? David nodded. The council is dying. Not literally, not immediately, but slowly and inevitably. We have maintained the same structure, the same laws, the same approach to governance for 12,000 years. We have become rigid, inflexible. We respond to every challenge with force, because force has always worked before. But the galaxy is changing in ways we do not fully understand. Vex's sensory organs shifted, focusing on David with unsettling intensity. New technologies are emerging faster than our regulatory frameworks can adapt. Species are developing capabilities that challenge our assumptions about what is possible. The quantum communications network you demonstrated should not exist, yet it does. There are rumors of experiments with dimensional folding, with consciousness transfer, with technologies that might make physical warfare obsolete. The Council tries to suppress these developments, but suppression becomes harder every year. You're saying the Council's model is becoming obsolete? David said carefully. I am saying that the galaxy needs new approaches to governance, and the Council is too invested in existing structures to provide them. Your species, Ambassador, might represent an opportunity for change, not through destruction of the Council, but through demonstration that alternatives exist. David considered this carefully. You want humanity to serve as a proof of concept. Show that species can exist outside Council authority without causing chaos, and maybe that opens space for reform. More than that, Vex said. I want you to succeed, because if you fail, it will validate the hardliners who believe force is the only solution to every problem. It will push the Council toward even more authoritarian approaches. But if you succeed, if humanity can establish genuine independence while maintaining peaceful relations with Council species, it might inspire reforms that prevent the Council from collapsing into irrelevance or tyranny. That's a lot of pressure to put on one species that's barely a century into spaceflight, David said dryly. Vex's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Yes, I apologize for that burden. But I believe you understand what is at stake better than most Council members. Which brings me to the real purpose of my visit. I have information that might prove useful in tomorrow's session. The Ancient being produced a data, crystal similar to the one David had used earlier. This contains details of voting blocks within the Council. Which species tend to align on which issues? Who holds grudges against whom? Which members are facing internal political pressures that might make them sympathetic to your arguments? Use it wisely. David took the crystal, feeling its weight in his palm. Why are you helping us? If other Council members discover this, it could destroy your position. Because I am old, Ambassador, and I have seen too much suffering inflicted in the name of order. The species the Council has destroyed might have been threats, or they might have been innovators we didn't understand. We never gave them the chance to prove themselves. I do not want humanity to become the 48th civilization on that list. And more selfishly, I want to see whether change is still possible before I die. Consider this my investment in that possibility. Vex rose to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, Ambassador. Tomorrow's session will be contentious. Commander Thax has been rallying support for immediate military action. He has convinced approximately 40% of the Council that your continued existence represents an unacceptable precedent. They will push for a vote on authorizing force. You will need to split that coalition to survive. How do I do that? David asked. By offering something the Council wants more than your submission. But I cannot tell you what that is. You must determine it yourself based on what you have observed. Vex's sensory organs focused on David one final time. Good luck, Ambassador. The galaxy is watching, whether it knows it or not. After Vex left, David spent hours analyzing the data crystal. The information was extraordinarily detailed, showing decades of voting patterns, personal relationships, and political maneuvering among Council members. It was exactly the kind of intelligence that could turn a losing position into a winning one. It was also confirmation that the Council was far less unified than it appeared. Cracks existed in the facade, and humanity's challenge was widening those cracks into genuine divisions. By the time morning arrived, David had formulated a plan. It was risky, possibly reckless, but it offered the best chance of achieving what humanity needed. When the Council reconvened, David was ready to make his final offer. The Council chamber was different when David returned to the floating platform. The atmosphere felt charged, electric with tension. Representatives who had seemed merely annoyed before now displayed open hostility. The voting blocks Vex had identified were clearly visible, with species clustered in groups that reflected alliance patterns rather than random seeding. Commander Thax stood as soon as Arbiter Kelvin called the session to order. The time for negotiation has ended, Thax announced, his massive form dominating the lower tiers. The Dominion fleet has completed analysis of humanity's military capabilities, even accounting for hidden installations and concealed technologies. We conclude that human forces can be neutralized with acceptable losses. I move. They prepared for a crisis they saw coming while we argued about protocols, the Arbiter countered. There is a difference. Admiral Kira Okonkwo's image suddenly appeared in the chamber without invitation. Several delegates hissed at the breach of protocol, but the Arbiter allowed it. My apologies for the intrusion, Kira said, sounding completely unapologetic. But I have been listening to you debate for 6 days while a hostile fleet approaches. Here is the reality. You have 17 days until 200,000 vessels arrive. Your military cannot stop them. Your political system cannot reach consensus. While you argue about whether to trust us, we have been preparing to defend a galaxy that includes our new colonies. A delegate suggested you could withdraw to your own territory. Defend only Earth and your settlements. We could, Kira agreed. Then the hostile collective tears through Council space, assimilates your technology and resources, and arrives at Earth's doorstep as an even greater threat. That is not strategy. That is delayed suicide. No, we are going to fight. The question is whether we fight as your allies or as a separate force defending the same territory. The Arbiter studied the human admiral. If we grant operational command to your forces, then we implement the battle plan already submitted to Fleet Commander Tetzrian. We combine Council quantity with human quality. Your vessels form the main battle line. You have numbers we cannot match. Our vessels serve as force multipliers, disrupting enemy formations and targeting their command structure. We have already identified their fleet hierarchy through signal analysis. Tetzrian's tentacles coiled with interest. You have analyzed their fleet structure? They have maintained communication silence for months. They have maintained conventional communication silence, Kira corrected. They use quantum-entangled particles for command networks, same as the Archivons. We cracked that encryption months ago. We have been listening to everything they say to each other. The implications rippled through the chamber. If humanity could break Archivon military encryption, no Council communication was secure. How many other Council encryption systems have you compromised? The Arbiter asked. Kira smiled. All of them. Well, except the Singing Hive Crystalline Resonance Network. That one still challenges our cryptographers. But give us a few more months. Rathkull's holographic form appeared in the chamber, pulsing with rage. This is what I am talking about. They have infiltrated everything. They admit to spying, and you still consider trusting them with our military? You do not need to trust us, Kira said simply. You need us. Trust requires vulnerability, and we will never be vulnerable again. But need is different. You need what we can provide. Marcus Webb's image appeared beside Kira's. The High Arbiter asked me what the galaxy looks like, with humanity as an equal partner. Here is your answer. It looks like a galaxy that survives the next 17 days. We are the only ones who took this threat seriously while you argued about protocols. He displayed his battle plan for the entire inner circle. Every Council species vessels are assigned roles based on their actual capabilities. We are not trying to sideline anyone. We are trying to win a battle that determines whether galactic civilization continues to exist. And after the battle? The Arbiter asked. You will have proven military superiority. You will have demonstrated that our security depends on you. What stops you from simply taking control? Nothing, Marcus admitted, except pragmatism. We do not want to run the galaxy. We have seen what that costs. The bureaucracy, the diplomatic crises, the impossible task of keeping 10,000 species satisfied. That is your job? We just want to ensure that when humanity speaks, we are heard. When we identify threats, you act on them. When we offer solutions, you do not dismiss them because we are new. You want respect, Kelva said. We want to never be caged again. Respect is the mechanism that ensures that. Marcus leaned forward. Look, we understand your position. You maintained peace through carefully balanced power. We upset that balance by advancing too quickly. But the balance was already breaking. Your economy is stagnant. Your military is overstretched. We are not the problem. We are the symptom that forced you to notice the disease. The Arbiter looked at each inner circle member. We need a decision. 17 days is not enough time for traditional deliberation. Then vote now, Keshnel said. The inner circle has emergency decision authority. If we do this, the Arbiter warned, we set a precedent that reshapes Council structure forever. We acknowledge that a species barely 1 year removed from containment is now our primary military power. We acknowledge reality, Kelvos countered. The question is whether we do it in time to survive. The vote was 10 in favor, 8 opposed. The narrowest margin in inner circle history. The Arbiter's feathers drooped with exhaustion. Admiral Okonkwo, you have operational command of all Council military forces for this crisis. Ambassador Webb, prepare integration protocols. If we survive, humanity receives full Council membership with an inner circle seat. Marcus nodded. We will hold you to that. I am sure you will, the Arbiter said. Now save the galaxy. Try to leave enough of our military intact that we do not become completely dependent on you. Kira grinned. No promises, but we will do our best. 17 days later, the largest fleet ever assembled in known history gathered at the edge of the Talon Nebula. 8,000 Council vessels from every member species formed a battle line that stretched across an impossible distance. The ships represented 3,000 years of galactic civilization, every design philosophy and weapons technology the Council had ever developed. Behind them, 700 human-crewed vessels waited in formation. Another 2,000 autonomous combat drones hung in space like sleeping predators, their advanced AI systems running final diagnostics before battle. Admiral Kira Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant, studying the tactical displays with the calm focus of someone who had prepared for this moment her entire career. The view screen showed the approaching threat. 214,000 hostile vessels moved toward them in a formation so massive it blocked out the stars behind it. Lieutenant Ramos worked his station, feeding constant updates. Enemy fleet maintaining tight formation. Their strategy appears to be overwhelming force through sheer numbers. They plan to absorb our attacks and crush us through attrition. They are right, Kira said calmly. If this was a conventional battle, they would roll over us like a wave. That is why we are not fighting a conventional battle. She activated fleet-wide communications. All Council vessels, this is Admiral Okonkwo. Execute Phase 1 on my mark. Your job is not to win. Your job is to be visible, threatening, and survivable. Make them commit their entire fleet. Make them think they are winning. 3, 2, 1 mark. The Council fleet surged forward in perfect formation. Thousands of vessels moving as one, weapons charging, shields at maximum power. To the hostile collective, it looked like a desperate defensive stand. Exactly what Kira wanted them to see. In the Council war room, the Arbiter watched alongside Fleet Commander Tatsurian and dozens of delegates who had demanded to observe personally. The holographic displays showed the two fleets rushing toward each other on a collision course that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Rathkole's voice carried panic. She is sacrificing the forward elements. Look at the casualty projections. This is madness. She is baiting a trap, Tatsurian said, his tentacles tight with tension. Watch the enemy formation. They are committing everything to breakthrough, just as her battle plan predicted. The hostile fleet hit the Council line like a hammer striking glass. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Shields collapsed under concentrated fire. Energy beams crisscrossed the battle space in a deadly web. The tactical displays showed Council casualties mounting rapidly. 10 vessels destroyed. 20, 50, 100. Delegates in the war room began shouting. Some demanded the human fleet engage immediately. Others called for retreat. The Arbiter remained silent, watching the battle unfold according to a plan it barely understood. The Council ships were retreating now, falling back in what appeared to be a breaking formation. The hostile fleet pressed forward aggressively, driving deep into the nebula in pursuit of what they thought was a defeated enemy. Their formation elongated as command. Vessels pushed forward to maintain momentum. That was when Kira, ACTIVATED Phase 2. Now, she said quietly, 700 human vessels dropped their stealth fields simultaneously. They materialized in perfect formation, surrounding the hostile fleet's flanks and rear. The enemy suddenly found themselves trapped inside a sphere of human ships. Then the 2,000 autonomous drones activated. In the Council war room, delegates watched in stunned silence as the drones created a massive spatial distortion field that encompassed the entire hostile fleet. The field was kilometers wide, a bubble of altered reality where the normal laws of physics simply stopped working. Inside that bubble, hostile vessels found their weapon systems failing. Their shields collapsed. Their navigation became unreliable as thrust calculations that had worked for centuries suddenly produced random results. EIR communication systems degraded as electromagnetic waves behaved unpredictably. Meanwhile, human vessels moved through the distorted space as if they belonged there. Their ships had been designed from the beginning to operate in variable physics environments. Their weapons had been calibrated to function regardless of what reality looked like at any given moment. She is not fighting them, Kelvos breathed in realization. She is processing them, like industrial machinery. The comparison was accurate. Kira's fleet moved with mechanical precision, targeting specific vessel types in a predetermined sequence. First, the command ships. 17 capital vessels that coordinated the entire hostile fleet. Without them, enemy formations began fragmenting as different sections received contradictory orders or no orders at all. Next came the long-range communication vessels. Cut off from their command structure and unable to coordinate with each other, the hostile fleet stopped operating as a unified force. They became thousands of individual ships making independent decisions. Then the heavy carriers that housed their fighter craft. The logistics vessels that resupplied the fleet during extended operations. The sensor platforms that provided battlefield awareness. Kira systematically dismantled not just the hostile fleet, but their ability to function as an organized military force. Lieutenant Ramos reported steadily. Enemy casualties mounting. 3,000 destroyed. 5,000. 8,000. They are attempting to retreat, but the spatial distortion prevents accurate jump calculations. They are trapped. Good, Kira said. Any vessel that attempts to flee gets priority targeting. We end this threat completely. Today. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 214,000 hostile vessels had been reduced to debris and disabled hulks floating in space. The Council fleet had lost 147 ships. Devastating losses, but a fraction of what conventional projections had predicted. The human fleet reported 12 autonomous drones destroyed. 0 crewed vessels lost. 0 casualties. In the Council war room, absolute silence reigned. The delegates stared at tactical displays, showing a graveyard of enemy vessels scattered across hundreds of cubic kilometers. They had just watched humanity demonstrate military capabilities that made 3,000 years of Council warfare doctrine look primitive. The Arbiter found its voice first, though it sounded shaken. Admiral Okonkwo, the hostile fleet is destroyed. Your performance exceeded all projections. Kira's image appeared on screen, her expression professionally neutral. We did what was necessary. My casualty report stands. 12 drones lost. No personnel casualties. The Council fleet fought bravely and performed their role perfectly. How? Tatsuri and his tentacles writhed in confusion. How do you fight at those odds and take minimal losses? We fight differently than you do, Kira replied. The Council developed military doctrine over millennia of small-scale conflicts between similar technological powers. You fight with honor and established rules. We developed our doctrine by studying the worst wars in human history, conflicts where survival mattered more than honor. We learned to be efficient rather than fair. Marcus Webb stepped forward in the war room. High Arbiter, the hostile collective you just saw destroyed, was the advance force. Our intelligence indicates this was their entire military capacity in this region. We have eliminated the immediate threat to Council space. Relief swept through the chamber, but Marcus raised his hand. However, we detected signs of other hostile collectives operating in distant regions. The galaxy is more dangerous than the Council has acknowledged. This will not be the last existential threat you face. Rathkal pushed forward, his 4 arms trembling. You have proven your point, Ambassador. You are militarily superior. You have made us dependent on you. Now you will dictate terms. No, Marcus said firmly. Now we offer partnership on equal terms. Humanity has proven we can defend Council space. The Council has proven it can mobilize thousands of species in a unified effort. Together, we are stronger than either of us alone. That is not domination. That is cooperation. The Arbiter descended from its platform to hover at eye level with Marcus. What do you want from the Council? What we have always wanted. Full membership. Representation in galactic governance proportional to our contributions. The guarantee that we will never be restricted or controlled again. And reforms to Council systems that have become inefficient through age. Reforms, Keshnel said slowly. You want to change how the Council operates. I want to update systems that were designed for a different era, Marcus corrected. Your economic structures assume slow growth and limited innovation. Your military command operates through committees that take weeks to make decisions. Your diplomatic processes prioritize consensus over effectiveness. These systems worked for 3,000 years, but the galaxy is changing faster now. Either the Council adapts, or it becomes irrelevant. Kelvo stood. The Coalition for Integration supports humanity's proposals. We have reviewed their reform package in detail. The changes benefit all member species, not just humans. The changes consolidate power, Rathkol countered. They create a system where military capability determines influence. That favors humanity. Military capability already determines influence, Marcus said. We are just proposing to be honest about it, rather than pretending otherwise. The species that can defend the Council naturally have more voice in security policy. That is not controversial. That is reality. The Arbiter looked at the assembled delegates. We will vote. First, on whether to grant humanity full Council membership with all rights and privileges. The tally rose steadily. 6,847 in favor. 3,203 opposed. A clear majority. Next, on whether to grant humanity representation on the inner circle. This vote was closer. 5,432 in favor. 4,618 opposed. But still a majority. Finally, on the comprehensive reform package proposed by Ambassador Webb. This was the critical vote, the one that would determine whether the Council transformed or remained unchanged. The tally climbed slowly. For long minutes, it was too close to determine. Species consulted with their governments. Delegates changed their votes after reviewing details. The final count appeared. 6,103 in favor. 4,947 opposed. The reforms passed. The Arbiter spread its wings in a gesture of finality. The Council has spoken. Effective immediately, humanity is recognized as a full member species with representation on the inner circle. The reform package will be implemented over the next 10 cycles. This session is adjourned. As delegates filed out, Marcus remained standing in the chamber. The Arbiter descended to meet him privately. You did it, the ancient being said quietly. You freed your species, proved your worth, and transformed the galaxy's governing structure. All in less than 1 year. We did what we had to do, Marcus replied. We will never let ourselves be caged again. I know. That is what frightens me. The Arbiter's feathers rippled with concern. You have set a precedent today. Any species can rise from containment to galactic power through competence and innovation. Others will try to follow your path. Good. The galaxy needs more innovation. Or perhaps we have ensured the next century will be dominated by species racing to outcompete each other, destabilizing the order we built. The Arbiter paused. Tell me honestly, will this partnership last? Or have we delayed an inevitable conflict? Marcus considered seriously. That depends on whether both sides commit to making it work. As long as the exchange remains beneficial to both parties, the partnership holds. The moment either side feels cheated, we have problems. That is true of any political relationship. The Arbiter looked out at the empty chamber. Do you know what I realized during this crisis? What? We never should have caged you in the first place. If we had integrated humanity immediately when you developed faster-than-light travel, you would have been junior members grateful for guidance. Instead, we gave you 2 centuries to develop in isolation, to study us without being studied, to build determination to never be controlled again. We created our own nightmare. You created your own partner, Marcus said. We are not the compliant junior members you might have preferred, but we are effective allies. In the end, effectiveness matters more than compliance. I hope you are right, Ambassador. Because if you are wrong, we just gave galactic civilization's most dangerous species unrestricted access to everything we built over 3,000 years. And there is no putting that genie back in the bottle. Marcus watched the Arbiter ascend to its platform. Then he activated his communicator. Kira, status report. Fleet pulling back to defensive positions. Council military is already requesting technology transfers and joint training programs. We are popular right now. Enjoy it while it lasts. Popularity is temporary. Capability is permanent. What is next? Next, we fulfill our end of the bargain. We help rebuild the Council fleet. We share enough technology to improve their defenses without giving away our competitive advantage. We participate in governance like good partners. And we keep building. Building what? Everything. We have won the right to exist as equals. Now we prove we deserve it. And we stay ahead of the curve. Because the moment we stop innovating, we become just another council species. That is not acceptable. Never caged again, Kira said. Never, Marcus confirmed. The council released humanity. They thought they were making a choice. They did not realize we made ours 200 years ago. We were always going to be free. The only question was whether we would be free as partners or rivals. Today they chose partnership. Now we make sure they never regret it. He ended the communication and looked at the stars. Billions of them, stretching across a galaxy that humanity had just claimed a share of. The cage was broken. The test was passed. The council had released humanity and realized their mistake too late. But it was not the mistake they thought. They thought their mistake was releasing a dangerous species. The real mistake was believing they ever had a choice. Humanity was always going to be free. The galaxy was always going to change. The only question had been whether that change came through cooperation or conflict. Today, the council chose cooperation. Tomorrow, humanity would show them that the most dangerous species is the one that knows how to be both friend and competitor, partner and independent power. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 200 years, humanity was perfectly fine with that. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.